Yuan woke up to the smell of burning metal and thick smoke. His escape pod had crashed on an unknown planet, the atmosphere heavy and strange. He struggled to move, his arm bleeding from a deep gash. Around him, the forest was quiet, but the ground shook beneath heavy footsteps. He looked up and froze. A giantess towered over the trees, nearly 20 feet tall, her skin shimmering with a faint blue light. Her eyes glowed like molten sapphires, and her claws dug deep into the soil as she stepped closer. Eren's heart raced. He remembered stories of her species, carnivores that devoured any human who dared enter their territory. He thought, this is it, I'm done for. The giantess sniffed the air, leaning down toward him. Her nostrils flared, and Yuan flinched, expecting the worst, but instead of striking, she reached out with a massive hand and gently lifted him. Her grip was strong, yet careful, as if she feared hurting him by accident. He struggled, screaming, "Put me down, I'm not food." She ignored him, moving swiftly through the forest, her long strides effortless. Eren's mind raced with fear and confusion. If she wasn't going to eat him, what did she want? The shadows of the trees shifted. Strange glowing fungi lit their path as she carried him deeper into the mountains. Every nerve in his body screamed that danger was near, yet every movement she made was deliberate, precise, protective. By the time they reached her shelter, Eren's fear had mixed with curiosity. He could see the cave walls covered in strange markings, symbols that seemed to tell a story. The giantess set him down. Kneeling beside him, for the first time, he noticed she wasn't snarling or growling. Instead, she stared at him with something that looked almost like longing. Yuan whispered, confused and terrified. What do you want from me?" The giantess tilted her head, then pointed to her chest, and finally at him. Her hunger was not for flesh, but for something else entirely. The question hung in the air, and Yuan realized that his fight for survival had just become the start of a mystery that could change everything. Yuan sat trembling on the soft moss floor of the cave. The giantess stood silently, her glowing eyes fixed on him. He expected her to attack at any moment, yet nothing happened. Instead, she turned and vanished into the shadows of the cave, returning moments later with a small bundle of strange fruits. She placed the food near him and stepped back. Yuan stared at the colorful fruits, confused and suspicious. His hand shook as he picked one up and tasted it. It was sweet and warm, unlike anything he had ever eaten. He looked at her, questioning silently. Why would a giant carnivore offer food instead of hunting him? Days passed, and Yuan realized something strange. The giantess never ate the human rations he had in his pod, only plants and fruits from the forest. Every time he tried to escape, she would appear, silent and patient, blocking his path without a growl. Her eyes seemed to follow his every move, studying him. It was as if she was trying to understand him more than she wanted to harm him. One night, while the alien moons lit the cave in silver light, Yuan noticed strange symbols carved along her massive arms and shoulders. They glowed faintly as she moved. Curiosity overcame fear, and he asked in a low voice, "What are these markings for?" She lowered her hand toward the symbols, then pointed at herself, and finally at him. Her meaning was unclear, yet her expression was gentle, almost pleading. Yuan began to wonder, was her hunger really for food, or was it something far stranger, something that he could not yet understand? The nights grew colder, the wind howled outside, and he realized the giantess was protecting him in ways no human could. He could feel her heartbeat through the ground, strong and steady. It was a rhythm that promised safety, yet it also whispered secrets he was not yet ready to hear. By dawn, Yuan understood one thing. This creature, feared by all legends, was not just a predator. She was something different, something extraordinary. Her hunger was not for flesh, but for something deeper, and Yuan knew he had to survive long enough to discover what it truly was. Days turned into nights, and Yuan began to notice more about the She moved with grace, almost like the forest itself obeyed her steps. Her hands could crush stones, yet she gently lifted small plants to examine them. He realized she was not a mindless predator, but something intelligent, careful, and thoughtful. One evening, a violent storm hit the mountains, lightning tearing the sky apart. Yuan shivered as cold rain soaked him. The giantess became frantic, rushing around the cave, gathering warm stones and herbs. She pressed him against her chest, using her massive body to shield him from the wind. For the first time, Yuan felt her care was real, not a trick or a trap. As he watched her, he noticed the carvings on her skin glowing brighter. They were not just decorations, they told a story. He realized she was exiled from her tribe. They had called her weak, because she refused to eat sentient beings. Her hunger had always been misunderstood by her own kind. She looked at him, eyes wide, almost pleading. It dawned on Eren that she had not saved him to eat him. She had saved him because she was lonely. Her hunger was emotional, a craving for connection, for someone who could understand her. Eren swallowed hard, fear mixing with awe. He realized the creature he had feared all his life was capable of love and loyalty, but their bond was fragile. If her tribe discovered him, they would see Eren as prey, and her secret, her choice to protect life rather than destroy it, could cost them both. Eren knew he had to be careful. Every word, every move, every breath mattered. The line between life and death, trust and betrayal, had never felt so thin. And yet, in that moment, surrounded by rain and the alien mountains, Eren understood that his fate was tied to hers. He was no longer just a survivor. He was part of her story, and her story was about to change everything he thought he knew about fear, courage, and hope. The morning air was calm, but Eren felt a strange tension in the mountains. The Giantess sensed it too, her eyes scanning the horizon. Suddenly, the ground trembled with heavy footsteps, louder and faster than any storm. A group of her own kind emerged from the forest, taller, stronger, and clearly hostile. Their glowing eyes were full of anger, searching for the lost prey she had taken. Eren's heart pounded. He realized they saw him as nothing more than a meal. The Giantess growled, a deep, vibrating sound that shook the rocks. She positioned herself in front of Eren, her massive frame shielding him from the approaching pack. Her claws dug into the earth, ready to fight, yet her expression held desperation, not hatred. The attackers charged, smashing trees and rocks in their path. Eren grabbed his emergency flare gun, aiming at the nearest giant alien. The bright flare startled them, giving the Giantess an opening. She swung her massive arms with precision, knocking attackers aside like toys. Eren realized she was not only strong but clever, using the environment to her advantage. But the fight was not without cost. One of the attackers clawed her arm, leaving a deep wound. Blood, blue and glowing faintly, dripped onto the rocks. Eren felt a surge of fear and guilt. He ran to her side, using his medical kit to bind the wound as best he could. She roared, not in pain, but in warning to the others, her eyes still protecting him. The attackers hesitated, unsure if they could take both of them. Eren realized then that their bond was stronger than any threat. The Giantess's hunger, once feared, had become their strength. Together, human and giant, they forced the intruders to retreat into the forest. The mountain was quiet again, but the danger had changed them both. Eren understood that survival was no longer enough. Now, he had to fight for trust, for friendship, and for the secret that could save them both. The storm had passed, leaving the mountains washed in silver light from the twin moons. Eren worked carefully, tending the Giantess's wounds with the supplies from his pod. Her glowing blue skin pulsed faintly as he cleaned and wrapped the deep gash. She watched him with eyes full of trust, a bond stronger than words could explain. For the first time Eren spoke softly. "You saved me, I think. Maybe you didn't just save me for survival." The Giantess tilted her head, as if agreeing. Her massive hand hovered over his shoulder, careful not to crush, yet offering comfort. Days passed, and rescue ships finally arrived, descending from the sky with loud engines. Eren stood beside the Giantess, knowing the humans would never understand her. He stepped forward and spoke for her, telling the rescuers she was not a threat. He explained her hunger was not for humans, not for violence. It was a hunger for companionship, trust, and understanding. The human crew looked at her in awe and fear, but Eren held his ground, shielding her. The Giantess lowered her head, allowing him to do what was right. For the first time, she trusted a human completely, and he understood that trust was more powerful than fear. As the rescue ship lifted off, Eren looked down at the alien world below. The forest's mountains and glowing rivers stretched endlessly. He felt a connection he could never explain. The Giantess roared softly, a sound of joy and relief. He smiled, knowing he had discovered something rare in the galaxy. Sometimes, the greatest dangers hide the greatest gifts, and sometimes, fear is only the first step toward understanding. Eren whispered, as they flew away together, in a galaxy full of monsters. The real miracle is finding someone who sees you for who you truly are. And for the first time in his life, he felt safe. understood, and alive.